We got a hot topic today.
Yeah, one of these days we're gonna have to come in with like black lights or
something. Yeah,
or
working on it.
something.
I've got colored lights that go around the painting. For folks that didn't know, no, the wall is not under construction. That's actually modern art. It's a painting. My wife is friends with the artist, but some people don't like that. It's a bit too industrial. I love it. Although it's sideways. It's supposed to be tall. But
I can already tell this is going to be a super focused session.
Yes. Okay. Sorry. Focus. All right.
So good morning. Welcome to the latest episode of the Project Failure Files. This is a series for anyone who manages people, projects, or processes for a living. I am Sharon Weaver, CEO of Smarter Consulting.
And I am Christian Buckley, founder of Collab Talk. And welcome to another episode of the series where Sharon and I explore management topics from the perspective of what not to do. In each episode, we talk about the common pitfalls, share some of our personal stories. And this is a good one because we both have a lot of experience with this one. Both of the cause of, I suspect, I do, certainly, as well as the having to manage the results of. But those personal stories are always fun. We explore then strategies and best practices. We have usually like a call to action at the end that you can apply it immediately to your life so that you become more successful at managing.
In this episode, we're going to talk about the dangers of shadow IT.
Dun, dun, dun. I know we should have sound effects built in.
If you're unfamiliar with this particular phrase, it's typically when someone is going to IT because they're trying to do their job, but they need access to something. They need access to a system maybe they don't have, or data they don't have, or maybe features in a platform. They want to do something that they don't have access to. Maybe they want permission to a third-party tool or platform or system, something they don't have.
Yeah, so basically they've got a technical roadblock and IT is not helping.
Yeah, I know that's never happens.
I know.
That's exactly what that is. And I know this is going to also shock you, but when IT doesn't respond or security doesn't approve that, maybe they're too slow to give them what they need. Maybe they tell them, oh yeah, we'll give you budget for that in 60 to 90 days. And you're like, the project will be over by then, but thanks a bunch. So what ends up happening is users like grab their personal credit card and they're like, you know what? I don't need you anymore. I'm just going to go buy this thing myself. Or, maybe I found a free one online. That's always a good option. I found a free one that can do exactly what I need it to do. So I'm just going to.
It's just ad-based. That's all. Yeah. Right.
It's just ad-based.
Yeah. Oh, so and they use my personal information.
Phone.
Yeah.
So they find these tools, to be able to get their work done. They want to get their stuff done. They want to get back to work. And now all of a sudden your company's, data IP information could potentially or probably be in some unmanaged, maybe non-compliant cloud, maybe in a different country where there's no oversight, no auditability, no manageability whatsoever.
Yeah, I've been on the user end of this as well as the IT side of this problem. And what I've learned is that it's about communication. So a lot of the failure is not that like the answer was no, it was the non-response. It was we don't have the bandwidth to look at it, or there's the dreaded, it has to go up the management chain. They have to look at it and approve it and things around it. And again, it goes back to, I need this. Somebody might even be coming in from a different company. They're new to that role. They're like, I did this at my last job. We had this tool. We were able to do this. We don't have that here. I needed to get my job done. And so, yeah, again, that's what the detail we're going to get into.
Well, and this used to be a small problem. And as technology has really kind of, grown and invaded literally everything we do all day, every day, it has become a very common problem. It's a very common issue. I think both of us have presented on some variant of this topic at multiple conferences. We'll probably be talking about it forever because it's just going to become bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger of an issue.
And it was certainly even before the SaaS, the cloud era of applications. I mean, I remember it back in the 90s of doing this. It was, on the server, on the computer under my desk. Right. Going and building things out and trying things out and then starting to use that. And what happens inevitably, like somebody in leadership that sees that, oh, I like that reporter. I like that tool. How did you do that? Well, I've got this application. that does this, and then everybody should use that. It's like, it's not meant for enterprise. It's not scalable. It's like all these other problems. And then being on the IT side of things, then suddenly you're being commanded, thou shalt support this. Yeah. So it should be a great conversation. As always, as with every episode, please feel free to comment throughout the episode and share your experiences. Any great examples or feedback, let us know. We'd love to incorporate. We do capture notes, feedback. If somebody shares a story, like, we'll incorporate it in. Sharon and I are writing a book, and this is an important topic within that. So we'd love to incorporate more of your stories, as well as interview you potentially for our Project Failure Files PM interviews. We want to know people's juiciest failures and what did you learn from that failure. We're not just going to dwell on it, but we will dwell on it over a long time. But the failures, the aspect of it, but then what you learn from that. But yeah, love to talk to more people about that.
If you don't dwell on it, how can you learn from it?
Exactly. We're both parents,
okay, let's get started.
We dwell on all that stuff for too long.
100%. Well, let's get started with some definitions so we can keep this thing rolling.
So again, I think we've described it, shadow IT. It's that unapproved, unofficial tools or systems that are used by employees to get their work done. And it may be, I don't know if you think back to the last time you had this scenario, Sharon, but generally it's because the new features are taking too long, or it's not live. There's been other problems, and everybody's in this limbo of trying to use the official approved tools. And again, we all have our experiences outside of the company, outside of that role, where we like, look, there's nothing wrong with this. I know this will allow me to get the work done the way that it needs to be done and quickly. And so if you can't, I always use that description, like employees are like water running down a hill. You put a stone in front of them and the water will just go around it.
Yep. Yeah. I was gonna say, AKA workarounds. I think as a Six Sigma black belt, as a business and technology consultant, I spend the bulk of my life helping companies try to overcome this exact challenge. People ask me all the time, what do you do? And I'm like, I start to explain it. They're like, so what do you do? And really a lot of it is this. It's this idea of a company pays all this money to implement these tools. And what ends up happening is the users, the people who need to use the tools, often for one reason or another, don't use them, or they don't use them properly, or maybe they don't have access to what they need and they work around it, like your example of the water going around. And because of that, they make up their own ways of doing things. And organizationally, we want to understand why that's happening so that we can find out, is it the wrong tool? Do they not have what they need? Do they need training? Do they need different features? There's so many ways to solve the problem, but truthfully, first of all, it's kind of like, it's a 12-step program. We got to admit we have a problem to begin with, and then we can start to figure out ways to solve it.
I love those projects, Sharon, and I know we've talked about this, so I know you've been through this many, many times, but where you go and you do the discovery process. So maybe it's a system upgrade, like a SharePoint version for the intranet, or you're going to migrate from the line of business applications of massive amounts of data from file shares over here, as you go through and do an inventory. And I've had conversations with clients. I used to work for a migration software vendor. And so we have these conversations all the time around this, where I'd say, well, how many custom solutions do you have? And third-party tools that aren't supported? It's like, oh, we have none of that. It's against the rules. Like, right. So you're saying you don't know what's on your system because they're there.
I've done two assessments for organizations in the last couple of months, like the last, 90 days or so. And they were like, we think we have a few. And I think we discovered like 150.
Yeah. Just massive amounts. Well, back in the day, back in the era, a big problem were videos and music files like sitting out on the corporate environment that were not supposed to be there. Mm-hmm. And so with a lot of that was before most systems could restrict file types and data.
And
There's
before
still
people had
ways around it.
phones.
Yeah. Yes. Right.
Back
Before
when you
all
were
that.
using your Zune, Christian.
Well, that was before a lot of the streaming technology was up and going as well. So, like, where else was I going to burn my thousands of CDs? Literally, folks, I have thousands of CDs still. My wife is always like, when are you getting rid of these? And I'm like, it's backup for, the failure of the cloud. Yeah. When we go offline, when we go dark, I'll still have all those CDs sitting in boxes in my closet right over there. Anyway, but with all of that, isn't the cause of most shadow IT, isn't it just a failure of governance or too restrictive governance? So, I mean, I realize why a lot of organizations, they go and lock things down. It's like external sharing. I know so many companies that turn off external sharing. Like, okay, we have customers and partners that aren't behind our firewall. We have to send information. And you've now said, no, there's not a secure way through our approved platforms to communicate with them and share these files and collaborate.
Christian, that's what a fax machine's for.
Well, again, where's that fax machine? Which coffee shop that still has a fax machine is it going to across the street from the headquarters of that partner? No, but it's, that's why you have then massive files that are attached in email still, or where the use of the personal
Dropbox.
Yes, I mean, all those things. Yeah, it's funny. Like, I have a Dropbox account because two former clients and one that I still am in touch with, that's what they use. And so I work with them through that. Otherwise, like I use Slack the same way. Like, I'm a Microsoft technology guy, so I use more Teams, but I maintain Slack because that's how I get files and communication with a subgroup of people. And so if Slack was not supported, and yet that's how I was communicating with these people, what would happen is I would have it on my personal phone, and then I would forward things over. It'd be a very
almost as secure.
Way.
It's almost as secure
right.
as being in these kind of offsite things. No, I think you're absolutely right. I think it definitely stems from either too much governance and control or not enough governance and control. It's there has to be a balance. You can't tell people you can't do anything, and you also can't tell people you can do anything you want. There has to be enough governance to keep yourself safe and risk-free, and not enough that it keeps people balanced.
Right. Yeah, it's look, there's a lot of risks that are out there. I mean, obviously, when you go and you talk with CISOs, with CEOs, CXOs in general, leaders out there, you say, what's your concern in doing business? Security is always number one. So security vulnerabilities of that, compliance vulnerabilities, depending on the industry, that could be major. And then overall data loss. And there's a lot of data out there, reports, studies that are done on all of these risks, but data loss most of all. There's a lot of fear out there, and of course, if you are a small to medium sized business, the cost as a percentage of your business is even greater for the small to mid sized company than it is for the enterprises that have usually some level of redundancy and things that are in there. But another aspect of this, as I always talk about feedback loops, is that so important from a product and service management perspective. IT loses visibility into what's really happening with the end users. If the answer from IT is no, without there being a discussion of why, and then the employee is more likely to go do something on their own. But it also means that you're losing then data, insights into this. I would rather have that conversation to understand. It could be with that employee, that educational, like, you're just unaware, like, no, we provide that functionality. Were you not aware that we did this? And a lot of times employees like, oh, I didn't know it could do that. Oh, okay. So there's a training thing, which then would indicate to me, we need to update our training. We need to spread the word about this capability. Or if we found something that we do not do, we can't do, they need to do it for their job, we have that conversation. We can then at least have a conversation around, let the company purchase the software and have someone from IT that has access in there and will follow these manual steps, these protocols for the safe management of that content. the end user gets what they need to get their job done. The company has manual governance steps in place around those tools. So it's not done in the dark. But there are few companies that do that. And so IT loses visibility. You get this fragmented workflow. When the new version of the intranet, of the whatever the platform, the operating system is that you do business on is released, guarantee you won't have those features because IT didn't know those features were being used.
Well, and I think with all of the rise of the feature sets in AI that are coming, and what it can do for people, and all of the different variants of the different tools and the different, ability to do things. I think shadow IT has existed for a long time. As we went to the cloud, as we got more collaboration tools, it became a bigger problem. I think AI is going to take this to a whole nother level of people using a lot of these AI tools personally. And what they don't realize is how much they're injecting their information, their data, that personal information into those personal tools that then's being, brought back into something. And I'm just waiting to see some of the very first groundbreaking cases around companies that go back and start to everything from penalize to sue employees for pushing that information into those personal AI tools. And they're not doing it maliciously. They're doing it to get their work done. But because so many companies are laggards in terms of technology adoption in the past, I don't think it's bitten them in the back as much as this will.
Well, right, because it's exponentially worse. Mm-hmm. And for folks that don't understand too, that if I go and I purchase an unapproved third-party SaaS tool and I'm taking our company IP, moving up, I'm collaborating with folks that are out there, then that data, let's say I get hit by a bus or I leave the company or whatever it is, if I'm not trying to be, I'm not trying to do something intentionally against the company, just forget that's there or whatever it is. But that if there's bad actors that gain access to that cloud system, again, we'd have no audit trail at the company, and they could go and use that data versus using, for example, an unapproved, a public LLM, using an AI application out there and not fully understanding usually the free versions. The reason it's free, air quotes here, is because they're using your data to train its model.
And so this is a good reminder. If you're not paying for the product, you are the product.
Right. And so, even if you're paying for the product, it's important to go and look. It's like, where's the data going? I mean, That's why it's like a massive difference. And Sharon and I, of course, we're Microsoft MVPs and regional directors. We're very much involved in that, the Microsoft ecosystem. Why Copilot is so important is because you can go in and use, because it leverages OpenAI, everything that's in ChatGPT over in Copilot, but all of your data is secured behind the firewall, will never train that model. And of course, there's a lot of other tools. Yes, there are AI models out there that you can have locally and kind of all those other things, but just generically of saying, if it's a service that you're going to the web for and you're moving IP into it, you better know how it handles that data. Most of the AI solutions are training on your data. Like it's not that somebody necessarily can just go and find the exact upload, the sharing of the documents that you used to train the model to get the results that you want back from those free tools. But the fact that then your proprietary data is out there and it is mixed into the results that other people get back is just really bad.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I think this gets us into talking about how to figure out like where people are using
and uncover it. Yes.
Yeah. How to figure it out. I mean, I think, it's really interesting to me because so once again, like I've done a couple of assessments over the last little bit for organizations that have come to me and basically said, okay, we want to make a change and we would like you to come in and help us to understand like what applications are we using so that we know like, how to manage that. And I think this is really important. If you are not cataloging and inventorying the tools that are used across your organization on even an annual basis, then I think you're at a very high risk for people doing all those workarounds and using tools and not knowing about them. And, you want to say, well, are they even going to tell us about it? I promise you, like, if you ask your employees, like, often they will be the first people to be like, I use this, 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 and this. And,
Right.
because they're not doing it maliciously. They're not doing anything wrong. They're just trying to get their jobs done. And, if you ask them and say, what are you using so that we can understand it, so that we can make sure you can do your jobs, I think that it's a really easy way to find out what is happening in your organization that maybe you're not aware of. I know that's a really simple answer for a big problem, but sometimes it's just a matter of asking and inventorying.
The wrong thing to do, the failure, it would be to go and I just identify by IP or by the URL, the destination, and just block those destinations out there. Because again, people are like water going down the hill. Like they will find a way around that, some other tool that you have out there. So if you are only doing the audit once a year, going through looking at that, or depending on how proactively you want to go and do that, what the better option is to have a culture where people feel like I can go and talk to IT about this need. But it does need to be responsive. It does need to be timely. I mean, I've worked with organizations as an employer or contractor or consultant where there was an SLA in place with IT. They had to respond within 4 hours or whatever it was, or one day, at least a response so that it was triage, that they know what it is. So if there's something urgent, there had to be a way to dial in to go talk to a human being and say, hey, look, this is more urgent. I need this for now. I'm going to move forward, but I want to do it with you being aware that I'm doing this. And there should be, a process in place that allows people to go and do this, but with some level of oversight. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah. So I know some of the stuff I've seen in the past, but what are some of the examples of shadow IT that you've seen? I think of things like access databases, like you said, servers under the desk with access databases. We talked about Dropbox a little bit, some of the AI tools. What are some of the other things you can think of?
I mean, there's all sorts of projects that are out there that are project management related, that are task related. I've seen teams that will go and like one team will go, doesn't like using because a manager came in, they don't like the Microsoft using, the Microsoft project management tools, and they want to use like Jira for tickets or
Monday
or kind of these other things that are out there. Again, not that those are inherently unsecure, but they're outside of the purview of the organization. That's the issue. So personal OneDrive is the thing that I see the most. Or the ugliest of ugly things are people are using email and then sending stuff to collaborate externally, like to their backup junk Gmail.
Hang on a sec. I'm gonna send something to my Gmail so that I can download it onto my phone.
Correct. Yeah, that kind of stuff. They'll get around that. I mentioned Slack. You have Microsoft has Loop. There's Notion that's out there. There's chat tools. WhatsApp. Like there's tons of
Discord's really getting bigger too.
It is
growing quite a bit.
Why are people if you're active on Discord, why are you angry? I think people that are active on Discord, they're automatically, I just think they're all angry. They're yelling at their computer. But yeah, I mean, there's other things. Well, like WhatsApp is a great example. Like Sharon and I are both in a number of communities around MVPs and RDs and other events and things that are all out on WhatsApp. And what's great is that in those circles, we do a good job of community management, of policing. If somebody's talking about something that's clearly NDA, we're like, shut it down. And we'll delete the messages. We'll get after them and say, please remember, this is not an endorsed place that's out there. This is the purpose of this for social conversations around this kind of stuff. But it's really, there could be any other unauthorized automation tools, scripts, or any workarounds that employees go and build. So you can have Power Platform might be supported. Using workflow, maybe something like Nintex is supported. But if there's guidance on how to develop those, if there's a governance body that needs to review any of those things before they go into a production system, like, you got to be following that activity. You need to be aware of that and follow the right protocols and steps.
Yeah, I think that's a good one too. Like, I mean, there's also all these applications. I mean, this is a little bit more old school, but it's the idea of even like downloading some of those applications on your computer, downloading files on your computer that you're not supposed to. It's not even just, well, I'm using this tool. It's also, are you following the general governance? Shadow IT is all technology tools. Are you using your own personal laptop at home to do a bunch of stuff, but you're not logging into your proper account? And so now you've got files on a different computer that you're not supposed to. I think Shadow IT encompasses more than just kind of rogue applications and things like that now.
I think that the right path forward for an organization it gets back to the cultural issues. If people don't feel like they can even bring forward and say, hey, there's a third-party tool, I used it at my last company, it does exactly what we need here, we don't have this capability, why don't we just don't use they're just shut down, like no is the answer there. If you ban them or lock them out and restrict them, there are people that would get angry enough, like, you're tying my hands, I can't get my job done. They will leave. It'll lead to other problems there in that area. It is just not the right way to work. There should be a culture of discussion, of understanding, and it needs to be done in a timely, responsive manner, so that it is more of a discussion, and it should be more spread out, meaning not everything should go up to a VP level to have to approve on these things. There should be some level of autonomy within a regional or a business unit IT team, if you have those, or within corporate IT for those tools, that managers of teams should feel empowered to be able to go and push something through, like, hey, we need this. We realize it's not ideal, but for these reasons, make a case and then go and use that.
Yeah. And I mean, so project failure files, when I think about the failure in this, I've seen so many times with so many companies, and I understand in certain instances, we talk about government stuff and top, clearance type stuff. It's a little bit different conversation, but I see in places that absolutely don't need this, where there are one or two people that are making some very executive decisions around these are the only applications we're going to use, and this is the only way we're going to let it happen. And we're not even going to be open-minded to anything else that's out there, because that's going to put us at any level of risk. And if the organization's risk tolerance is incongruent with the security around IT in general, and the overall the organization's risk tolerance, but your technical risk tolerance is much lower, you're going to see some of this stuff happening. And this is why I really encourage people, when they're developing their governance plan and when they're developing their governance steering committees, to bring in people from the business. So if I ever, if I work with a client on a modernization project and I'm setting up a governance group for them, I'm going to really encourage them to say, you need representatives from IT, you need representatives from security, but you also need representatives from the business, because they need to speak on behalf of the business need when making these decisions, so that if you say, no, we're not going to do that, they can challenge you and say, no, we need to be able to do this. And maybe you don't like it, but let's find a compromise. Let's find a way that we can solve these people's problem, these end users' problem, while also still meeting the risk tolerance or the security needs, or, whatever it is, the privacy needs that meet that regulatory requirement, or that meet that business requirement or that business rule. But those business users or stakeholders need to be part of that governance discussion and decision committee for that to happen.
I'd even argue that should be an open meeting, that anybody that feels that they need to have visibility in that and to be able to voice a concern, to be there to themselves. I used to do that with governance bodies committees that I ran. Anybody could come in, like, here's the agenda, we're going to be talking about this, like, oh, I'd like to come and sit here to explain. And so that was great for the stakeholder representing my business unit to have people sitting back behind them. And so when somebody says, oh no, I don't see as that an issue, and like, here's the two people working on the project, let them tell you their perspective on this, and can move the needle on a decision around that. I mean, the other side of this too is of the not saying no is like, okay, what are the alternatives? What do you offer back? And it could be like if we have our intranet built on SharePoint and I'm trying to go in as an employee and share a competing platform for the storage of documentation, well, the answer is no. Like, you could have a list of like, this is the way that we do our work. These are our standard tools. Here's how you do these things. Really what we're talking about are things that are beyond what we already go and offer. Because in the cases where if somebody came to me, I would say like, no, we use SharePoint. It's like, well, I don't know how to use this. It's slightly different. Like, well, let me show you. Let's train you on that.
Yeah.
It's a training issue. But when the features are not there, the capability is new, net new. That's more of what we're talking about here. And so that process, again, going back to allowing everybody into the governance committee, but making that process as transparent as possible. That is a huge part of this. Because when people don't feel like, hey, I need this thing, and they don't feel heard, nobody responds to them. There's no recognition of, yeah, you're asking for something. We've already been said no to it here. It's not on our roadmap, like whatever. If you're not having the conversation, they don't know what to think. They just know that no one's listening to them. They're more likely then to go and do it on their own.
Yeah, well, and we say this in every single episode, but there has to be a way for people to provide feedback. And one of the ways might be to have an open meeting where people can show up. Another way might be where you've got maybe a button on your intranet that says, hey, are you struggling? Do you have a roadblock? Is there something that needs to go to the governance committee? Fill out this form. And in our next meeting, we'll bring it up and we'll have a topic around it. Or maybe we'll put it on a public forum and we'll say, here, I need this. And, okay, let's talk about that. I think there has to be, and it doesn't matter how you do it, but there has to be a way that the general population and the people who are doing the work are represented and have the opportunity to provide that feedback back to the people who are ultimately making the decision to say yes or no.
One of the things I talked about, the fact that even if IT says, hey, in 4 hours, we triage the question, meaning we take it in, we add it to our issues board, we give it an owner, we let people know, hey, this is something that we've already said, like, no, it's denied, here's why, here's who it came from. So if you have that kind of approach, and maybe that is a little too detailed, but again, you could have it as simple as IT out on your intranet on the page has a report that has like all of the requests that have come in, who requested it, when it was the intake process was done, and then a status on it, and then set up for automatic notifications, all stuff that's really easy in this age and era with the tools that we have out there, most intranets. If you need a new intranet, come talk to Sharon and I. We can help you with that. But that way, if I put in, I say, hey, I need this, here's my request, and I submit it to IT, and within a few hours, I get a notification, it's been added to the board, and the status is in review, and I know that the in review, that like within 24 or 48 hours, they'll review it, and then they come back and say, hey, look, this is an education issue that we see this. If we're missing something, let us know, provide more feedback, come in, here's a number, here's the ticket, here's the item. But there are ways that you can do that, just like any other internal support, that is responsive, so they know that it was seen, it was viewed, it was considered. And I, as the employee, I don't know all of the other discussions going on. I don't know the history behind that. There might be a reason why the answer is no, but you've got to tell me that. All I know is I'm trying to get my work done. Well, so transparency equals trust.
Thinking too is if we say no, you have to understand on the organizational side that you're now creating a risk of either somebody not being able to do their work, which then causes all kinds of other problems, or creating the shadow IT to solve their own problem because you're not solving it for them.
Yeah. Well, one of the things to weigh here too, Sharon, is the kind of the risk versus benefits of, do we leave this stuff in place? So you go in for a client and do an audit. Is the process just then to remove all of those, those tools, all of those databases, whatever was created through shadow IT, or what's the process?
I mean, only if they want like 1 million support tickets, because everybody's going to start screaming and there will be much gnashing of teeth, and they're going to have the pitchforks out. No, I mean, it's like any other good change management or adoption plan. And the idea is identifying what is out there, identifying how many people are using those things. Because oftentimes, so I said, one of these projects we found I was 156, separate applications, but I would say a large percentage of those only have a couple of people on them. And that's an easy remedy. So if we've got out of 150, if 50 of those applications are a handful of users, that might be, we go meet with those particular users and say, can you please explain to me why you're using this product instead of a different product? And it could be, like you said, that maybe they didn't know it existed. Maybe they were on a time crunch and they set it up because the other one wasn't, implemented yet and they just didn't switch back. Maybe there was a feature that was missing. But I think, the first step is identifying what is the gap and what is the reason that these people are doing it. But that small handful is usually a pretty easy win. And then you kind of work back into the larger groups and say, okay, are there, applications that essentially could be streamlined by saying, why do we have SurveyMonkey when we have Microsoft Forms, right? Is there a reason that we have to keep this when we could simply just move over into the other tool? And so then I think that second piece is not just educating the end users, but also educating IT leadership on what is it that you're trying to accomplish? What tool do you want to define to be the primary tool for that? And what do people do in the situation or the case of an exception handling need? And by creating this entire process, by having a change management strategy, you can get to the other side of that. And now you know what you're using, who's using what, and people feel empowered to continue to do their jobs.
I mean, you could go through and do a risk profile on each one of those things. I would agree with you and start with it. One, you identify that they're there. And I would also argue that even as thorough as your team has done on those kinds of discoveries, those assessments, I'm sure there's dozens that you didn't pick up that are out there that you'll find out later about. But one is to identify, and the people that are there and have the conversation. Remove, maybe a third of those can be met by existing functionality, and it's just an education issue. And then looking at the remainders, it's is it providing value that the existing solutions lack? Is it something that can be secured and scaled for the organization? Again, that risk profile. Are there security compliance risks there? And then is that an unacceptable level of risk for that capability? How long does it need to be used? Is there the next version of whatever that can't do it today answer that need? And again, all of those things are a conversation with the people that created the shadow IT. It's really, you've got to get down. There's no other way around it. It's a grassroots efforts. Why did you do it? I'm not mad. Just tell me. And with the goal of closing these gaps, of giving them the capability so that they can be the most efficient and productive in their roles and get their work done. Sometimes the risk profile is high and the only answer is shut it down. So that's part of it, but it should not be the blanket answer for that. In fact, I think that'll be a small percentage compared to the majority of the things that are out there. Largest being education, and there is no gap. They just weren't aware. The smallest being it actually is a danger to the organization. The other stuff is just, it's risky, but with people that are, again, they're not trying to do something bad against the company. They are trying to get their work done. They just are unaware of the higher risks involved with those things.
Yeah.
So thinking about, to kind of wrap things up, long-term strategies that can prevent this, I think it goes back to what we've talked about, having a process in place. How often would you recommend that a company audit I mean, doing an annual audit and hiring an external partner, again, Smarter Consulting with Sharon's team can help with that process. But I mean, what do you recommend for, is it more of a proactive, or is there like an annual or semi-annual audit?
I mean, I definitely think an annual audit is always a good idea. I think if you want to be more mature and you want to be, kind of stay on top of it, maybe a quarterly, the more you do things, the more often you do things, the less work you actually have to do because it breaks up into smaller chunks. So it really depends on, how you want to do things. But you could have it, be a regular monthly audit. You could have a regular quarter audit. I definitely think bare minimum annual. But if you really want to excel at this, I would say probably monthly or quarterly would be ideal. And even if you're just simply taking, one little task time to say, hey, let's run through what we've got and see if there's anything we're missing, do a review. But once again, this should be part of your governance plan. Like how often you do it comes back to what's your governance plan, what's your risk strategy, who's involved in it, what does your committee say? I always say the more often the better, though.
Yeah. The one last thing I'll say too, because it has been, in my experience, at the front of the problems with this is that you have to have a fast and effective IT support model. Mm-hmm. You need to have leaders in place there that understand, that want to develop like whatever it is, the SLAs, and hold to that, be measured against those SLAs. What is our response time? Again, any support operations, a mean time to resolution. How long does it take, not only from ticket being logged through, problem being solved? What is that average duration? Are we improving on that? Are we getting better at doing that? And that comes through, again, audits and technology reviews, but looking at that process and then preaching that, spreading the word that this is our process. And you need, we're not going to tell you no right away. It might be no, but that here's our process, and you will hear from us. Like we will triage within 4 hours during working hours, or whatever the support model is. But within 48 hours or 24 hours, whatever it is, that we'll have the status board with something if it's part of an existing, otherwise it'll be in review. Here's what this means. That's why so many companies, that if you ship something or sell something, there's a tracking ID. There's a way to go in so that people want to have that sometimes minute by minute, what's going on with my request? Where's my shipment, on the road coming to me to be delivered? And what is that factual information? Amazon is usually. I'm not the personal experience, but call to action. You really want to focus on trust here. That's where you're going to reduce. Probably the simplest way to describe this, if you want to reduce shadow IT, you need more trust in IT and more engagement, better communication.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is it for this week's episode, and be sure to follow us and subscribe. I guess I can pull banners up, and there's our social profiles. We're all over the place. So I think I'm most active, LinkedIn for sure. LinkedIn. I'm still on Twitter, X. I just started calling it X Twitter, the little X with the capital T, but a little bit over on Blue Sky and a few other places, but kind of across all the major social channels. So you can find that. Of course, all the previous episodes, everything's out on the Tube of Views. You can find it under @BuckleyPlanet. If you search for Sharon's name or my name and project failure files, or just the word project, you'll likely find all this stuff. I also blog about it out on Buckley Planet, so you can find it there. And then we also have the site out there. We've got a newsletter starting up, so you can go find it out there. Sign up for it. What we're going to do, we have plans. We were actually discussing it before we were recording this. So there will be just the kind of everybody. You'll get eventually it'll be weekly of what that week's episode was, with a link to the recording and what's coming up the following week. And so kind of a reminder of the next topic. So if something is really, hits a topic that you're concerned about, you want to participate in it, you're well aware of that. We're also working on a paid version of the newsletter that goes into much more in depth. We're talking about doing like Christian and Sharon's takes on each of the topics, so more in depth. Some of our thoughts, like with me talking so much, Sharon's just like, "Shut up, Christian. I've got something to say." She has an opportunity. She didn't take advantage of it, and no, but to do that, as well as some members only office hours. So we're talking about doing a few things. And of course, if you're ever looking for coaching, consulting on that, on any of these topics, Sharon and I are both available for that stuff as well. So lots going on there, of course. And, you know, the website that's out there, it's kind of a plain site right now. There's more coming. We just are kind of busy. There's lots of stuff going on, but the site is forthcoming. But any other final words, Sharon? Parting words?
My parting words are always, kind of the same thread, which is, plan ahead, focus on your culture, and trust your people, and it'll all work itself out.
It will work its way out. All right. Well, we'll see you next Monday, 9 a.m. Pacific. See you later.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.